Louise, we need to get out of here now. Louise, what are you doing?
Everything okay in there?
Yeah, we're all good.
Anything we can get you?
No, we'll just be a minute.
You have to eat your vegetables. Like we don't chew with our mouths open.
Please, could you stop telling my daughter what to do?
Is there anything you'd like to say?
You guys have been...
Just a breath of fresh air. Oh, well, that is very sweet of you to say.
At the beginning of the movie, a family is seen traveling in a car. They reach their destination, and the couple gets out, but their son remains seated in the back seat. The scene then cuts to a man named Patty asks another man named Ben if the chair on his side is free. Ben says yes, and Patty drags it to his spot. Ben then sees Patty and his family are enjoying their vacations to the fullest. Later, Ben and his wife, Louise, leave their daughter with the caretaker and head out. As they are leaving, Ben glances into Patty's room and sees Patty and his wife, Kiara, dancing and enjoying themselves. Louise pulls him away. Then, during lunch, an old Dutch couple keeps Ben and Louise engaged in endless conversation, tiring them out. Meanwhile, Patty and Ciara watch and laugh at them. Next day, we see Agnes telling her parents that she has lost her soft toy, Hoppy. Trying to calm her down, Louise reassures her that her dad will go look for it. Frustrated, Ben sets out to search for Hoppy. On his way, Ben sees Patty riding a scooter, enjoying himself with his family. Despite searching for Hoppy, Ben is unable to find it and heads back. When he returns, Agnes excitedly tells him that Hoppy has been found. Patty explains that his son, Ant, was the one who found it in hotel. They all introduce themselves to each other, and Ciara mentions that Ant has some trouble communicating. Agnes then sweetly introduces Hoppy to Ant. Patty then invites them for lunch, and the scene cuts to them all enjoying a meal together. As they eat, they discuss their professions. Ben shares that they are new to London and are still finding their way. Patty asks if they have ever been to the West Country, to which they reply, no. Patty insists they must visit, and Ben responds, that would be great. Patty then reveals that he is a doctor. He then asks Louise why she is vegetarian. For animal welfare or personal health? Louise replies that it's for both reasons, as well as for the environment. Agnes asks Louise if she can go play, and she and Aunt walk off together. Patty then explains that Ant has a condition called congenital aglossia, meaning he was born with a much smaller tongue, which makes communication difficult for him. Later, the four of them meet again for dinner, growing even closer as they bond. The scene then shifts to Ben and Louise at their home in London, back from vacation. Ben says goodnight to Agnes, who asks him to also say goodnight to Hoppy. Ben then tells Hoppy goodnight as well. Afterward, he steps out and expresses his concern about Agnes's strong attachment to Hoppy. He also shares with Louise that he didn't get the job he applied for. Louise reassures him and mentions that Patty wrote to them. The letter says they missed the wonderful week they spent in Italy and invites them to visit their farm. Ben suggests they go for a change of scenery. Louise hesitates, saying they barely know them, but seeing Ben upset, she agrees that they should go. The next day, they head to Patty's farm, finally reaching their destination by night. Patty and Kiara welcome them warmly. Kiara shows Louise and Agnes their respective rooms. Later, Kiara tells them that, to celebrate their arrival, Patty butchered a goose. Hearing this, Louise feels uneasy. Patty then reveals the meat and offers a piece to Louise, saying, "This is our gift to you." Ben volunteers to try it, but Patty insists that Louise should have it first. Unable to refuse, she takes a bite. As soon as Patty looks away, she discreetly spits it out. Later, Ben goes outside to throw out the garbage. As soon as he turns around after disposing of it, he sees Ant standing there, trying to say something. Just then, Patty arrives, and Ant quickly runs inside. Next, we see the four of them having drinks. Ben comments on how quiet it is and asks, "Do you guys even have any neighbors?" Patty responds, "Yeah, across the valley." Kiara then asks Louise if she has neck pain. Louise replies, "It's just something that flares up sometimes. I'll take some medicine." Just then, Louise hears Ant crying. Concerned, she asks, "Is he all right?" Kiara reassures her, "He's fine. He'll sleep in a minute. It's just part of his condition." Louise asks, "So he's not in pain?" She then gets up to check on Agnes, but Patty stops her, and Ant suddenly stops crying. Later, in their bedroom, Ben tells Louise Louise that she should have refused the meat. Louise replies, "I was just trying to be polite." Just then, she notices that the bed sheets are dirty and points it out to Ben. He looks at them and says, "That's an old stain." Louise then asks, "Don't you think it's strange for a doctor to live in a house like this?" Ben says, "They probably choose to spend their money on less material things." At that moment, Agnes enters the room and asks if she can sleep with them. Louise agrees and shows her a breathing app to help her relax, and they all settle in for the night. The next day, they all go out to explore the farms and the lush greenery around them, enjoying their time together. While the four of them are sitting and chatting, Agnes calls Louise. Louise asks Aunt to move aside so that Agnes can swing. Just then, Patty arrives and asks Aunt for a piggyback ride, but suddenly he pulls Aunt forcefully. Ben steps in to stop him. Patty then tells Aunt to give Agnes a push on the swing, and Aunt complies. Meanwhile, Louise feels a sharp pain in her neck, which Patty notices. He moves closer to help fix it, making both Louise and Ben uncomfortable. Later, they all decide to go cliff jumping, but Louise feels shy. Just as they are about to jump, she asks Patty if it's safe. Patty reassures her, and everyone jumps, except for Louise and Kiara. Ben notices that Aunt is struggling to swim. Concerned, Louise asks Kiara if Aunt can swim. Kiara reassures her, saying, "Don't worry, Patty's got him." Then Kiara jumps as well, and they all cheer up Louise to take the leap. The scene cuts, and we see Louise's hairdryer suddenly short-circuiting. Ben asks her to calm down and take a nap. Louise admits that she doesn't find them all that pleasant to be around. She suggests, "Maybe we can use my neck pain as an excuse to leave." Just then, Kiara enters and invites them to dinner at Mike's place, a local spot. She explains that he has a small place by the sea with a private dining area, like a chef's table experience. Reluctantly, Louise and Ben agree to join. Next, Louise, Ben, and Agnes come out, all ready to go. Just then, Majid enters, and Kiara introduces him, mentioning that while his English isn't the best, he's a great babysitter. Louise hesitates. "Aren't the kids coming with us?" Kiara replies, "Didn't I tell you that?" Louise looks confused as Majid takes the kids inside. Louise asks Ben, "Are you sure we should leave Agnes with them?" Ben says, "We've had nannies before. Come on, let's have a good time." On the way, they experience Patty's reckless driving, but they eventually reach a quiet place. Louise reminds Patty that she's a vegetarian and says she must have mentioned it yesterday. Patty apologizes and then asks, "But you eat fish, right?" Louise agrees, and a small argument ensues between them on the topic. Meanwhile, at home, while playing hide and seek, Aunt takes Agnes to Patty's room and shows her his watch collection. He shows her one of the watches back, but Agnes doesn't understand. Just then, Majid approaches them and quickly puts the watch back. The scene then cuts to Patty, telling the others about his difficult childhood and the impact of his parents. He explains, "Sometimes parents fill you with their own faults and then add some extra just for you. Man hands on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself." As he shares this, his eyes well up with tears, and Kiara consoles him. Patty adds, "Kiara rescued me." Later, when Mark hands them the bill, Ben pitches in, and Patty hands the bill to him before heading outside, leaving Louise and Ben feeling awkward. At home, Aunt quietly wakes up Agnes and shows her the marks of his injury. Agnes asks, "How did you get those?" Suddenly, they hear someone approaching and pretend to be asleep. Kiara opens the door, says she is an angel, and leaves. Later, Patty notices that one of his watches is misaligned. He fixes it and closes the drawer. Meanwhile, Ben and Louise get into an argument in their bedroom, where it's revealed that they are having problems in their marriage. However, they eventually decide to prioritize being friends first. They hug each other, and someone is seen eavesdropping on their conversation from the door. Later that night, Louise wakes up and decides to check on Agnes. When she reaches the kids' room, she notices that they're not in bed. She gets scared and heads to Kiara's and Patty's room. She's shocked to find Agnes sleeping with them. Quietly, she takes Agnes out and tells Ben to wake up and leave immediately. The scene cuts to them leaving the house, and Aunt watches them helplessly from the window, with Agnes also seeing him. On their way, Agnes realizes that she doesn't have her hoppy. She asks her mom, and they both realize she left it behind. Agnes gets upset, and Louise reassures her that once they're home, they'll get her hoppy back. Agnes worries that they might hurt the hoppy like they did to Aunt. Louise says that Aunt isn't hurt. He was born that way. Agnes insists that she needs her hoppy, or they will do the same to it as they did to Aunt. She says, "I can't breathe." Reluctantly, Reluctantly, Ben turns the car around and heads back to get it. They arrive, and Ben tells them to wait for 2 minutes. He goes inside quietly, and after a while, Louise follows him. When Louise enters, she finds that Patty and Kiara are awake. It becomes clear that they had left without telling them. Patty asks, why? Ben, feeling embarrassed, starts making excuses, but Louise intervenes and tells them the truth, that she found Agnes in their bed. Kiara explains that Patty didn't know and apologizes. She says tearfully, we had a baby daughter, Mary. She died at 12 weeks from cot death. Agnes kept calling for you during the night, and you didn't come, so I took care of her. Just then, Agnes comes running in, saying that Aunt found her hoppy. Aunt tries to say something, and Patty explains that he's trying to tell them that he's sad they're leaving because he wanted to show them the chickens. Agnes pleads with her parents to stay, and they decide to stay. Later, the kids and mothers are enjoying the outdoors. Aunt secretly writes a note and shows it to Agnes, but it's in a different language, and Agnes can't read it. He tries to explain, but Kiara notices. She walks towards the kids, and Aunt quickly eats the note, leaving Agnes confused. After a while, Agnes tells her mother about the incident. Louise responds, I think he's going through a lot. Agnes replies, something is not right with him. Just then, Kiara intervenes and takes Agnes with her. Later, Patty shows Ben and Louise the sculptures Kiara made, called Mother's Love. Just then, Agnes asks if she can show them her dance. Kiara says, after lunch. Suddenly, Louise cuts her finger, and Ben asks Patty to look at it, saying, thank God there's a doctor here. Patty responds, I'm not a doctor. Louise, surprised, asks, but you said you were a doctor. Kiara laughs and says, he just wanted to make a good impression. Patty adds, I don't do anything. Ben and Louise are shocked when they hear this, and then Patty and Kiara burst into laughter, saying they were just joking. Everyone laughs together. Later, during lunch, Kiara keeps interrupting Agnes, telling her how to eat. Louise finds this odd and asks her to stop telling Agnes what to do. Patty then tells Kiara to apologize to both Louise and Agnes. He then turns to Louise and asks if she has something to say. Louise hesitates and says that maybe she overreacted. Ben then asks Agnes and Aunt to perform the dance they had prepared. As they start dancing, Patty suddenly stops the music and tells Aunt to dance properly. Louise reassures them, saying, don't worry, just start again. Patty plays the music again, but after a while, he stops it once more and starts scolding Aunt for not dancing correctly. He plays the music again, and the kids begin dancing, but Patty, growing frustrated, gets up angrily and becomes rude toward Aunt. Agnes, scared, runs to her parents. At Patty's insistence, Ben encourages Agnes to dance again. Patty plays the music once more, and as the kids start dancing, he suddenly screams and throws something at Aunt. Ben shouts at Patty, he's just a kid, Patty. Louise adds, what's wrong with you? Patty counters sarcastically, oh, so now you're parenting our child? He then turns to Aunt and yells, go to your room. Louise and Ben also leave the scene. Frustrated, Louise says, I want to leave now. Ben, still shaken, replies, I just drank a lot. Let me get some coffee first. Louise retorts, Ben, you have no problem standing up to me, but you won't say anything to him? She then walks away. Later, Kiara pleads with Louise not to leave before Patty wakes up. He'll be angry, she says, and it won't be good for me and Aunt. Just then, Ben joins them. Meanwhile, Aunt quietly sneaks over and manages to take the keys from Patty's waist. Using the excuse of playing, he leads Agnes to a secluded spot. He signals her to stay quiet and unlocks a door. He then opens a cellar, and they both step inside. Switching on the light, Agnes sees numerous suitcases, bags, shoes, and phones stacked inside, and then shows her a book filled with photos. In each picture, Patty and Kiara are with different children, along with other couples having a child, revealing that Patty and Kiara have been inviting parents with a child, kills the one they already have, and takes the new one. Then, Aunt shows Agnes a picture of his father. He signals to her that Patty was the one who cut out his tongue so that he couldn't speak. Finally, he points to a new picture, revealing that Agnes is the next child they plan to take. He gestures for her to take pictures of the evidence, and Agnes quickly snaps photos before they leave. Aunt locks the cellar door again and walks away with the keys. Inside, Aunt notices that Patty has woken up. Patty asks him what's going on. Aunt gestures that everyone is outside drinking coffee. Patty checks through the window, then turns back to Aunt and demands, Show me love. Nervously, Ant hugs him. After a moment, Patty suddenly grabs Ant's hair and throws him back. Ant quickly signals for a piggyback ride. Patty smirks and says, "Let's go show everyone we're still friends." Ant hops onto his back, and in that moment, he discreetly slips the keys back onto Patty's belt. Then, we see Agnes removing a thorn from a plant and pricking it into her thigh, causing her to bleed. She does this so she can get some alone time with her mother and tell her everything. Agnes goes to her mother and pretends that she has gotten her period. As soon as they enter the washroom, Agnes shows Louise some pictures on her phone and says, "We're going to leave, right?" Louise becomes tense and asks her to stay calm. Agnes starts to panic, but Louise tells her to be brave. She instructs Agnes to lock the door from the inside. Stepping outside, Louise takes a deep, shaky breath before going to call Ben. Patty asks if they need any help, but Louise declines and leaves. She then quickly finds a cutter. Just then, Kiara offers to help, but they refuse. Louise explains to Agnes that they cannot look stressed or scared. They have to act as if everything is normal. Agnes, crying, says, "I can't do this. I can't go out there." Louise reassures her, "All right, then don't pretend it's normal. I'll tell them that you got your first period and you're completely freaked out, so we just need to get you home." They come out of the washroom. Suddenly, Kiara asks, "How is she?" Louise replies, "She's pretty freaked out, totally overwhelmed. I think it would be best if we got her home." Patty says, "You're not a girl anymore. You're a woman now." Then, he asks Ben if he needs a drink. Ben declines. "No, we're going to leave now. We had a really great time." As they step out of the farmhouse, Ben whispers to Louise, "The tire is punctured." Just then, Patty notices the flat tire. He then fixes the tire and asks Agnes, "Do you have everything you need?" Agnes signals to her mother. Hoppy is on top of the building. She says, "I just want to go home." Patty insists, "You can't leave without Hoppy." He brings out a ladder and tells Ben, "You're taller than me." Ben climbs the ladder, but as he reaches the top, the ladder slips slightly. He tries to grab Hoppy, but the ladder slips again. This time, he manages to get it, but it's now damaged. Louise reassures Agnes, "It's okay, we'll fix it." They all hug, and Agnes whispers to Ant, "We won't leave you." At that moment, Patty inappropriately hugs Louise. Later, as they prepare to leave, Patty tells them to text him when they reach home. Then, he adds, "You won't, will you? You're still not being completely honest, are you?" Louise looks at him and admits, "No, we're not. Actually, Ben and we won't be together. I betrayed him with someone else because I was deeply unhappy in my marriage. I've apologized, but it's clear that Ben and I can't move past this." Patty looks at her and says, "Ben loves you very much." Ben cuts in, "I think we should go." He asks Ant, "Can you open the gate?" But Patty stops him and opens the gate with a remote. As they reverse the car, Agnes suddenly asks, "What about Aunt?" Louise reassures her, "We'll come back for him." Ben tells everyone, "Just smile and wave." Just as they are about to escape, Patty suddenly grabs Ant and throws him into the lake. Agnes screams. They threw Ant in the lake. Ben rushes to save him, but Patty quickly closes the gate. Ben manages to rescue Ant, but then he sees Patty holding Louise at gunpoint. The scene cuts to Patty, who is forcing Louise to transfer all their money into his account. Ben pleads, "Take whatever you want, just don't hurt my family." As soon as the transfer is complete, Patty cuts off the internet. Ben asks, "Why are you doing this?" Patty replies, "Because you let us. You rich people, with your gas-free Teslas and line-caught tuna, giving yourselves a gold star just because you befriended a couple with a disabled kid." He then fills a syringe with a drug and orders, "Roll up your sleeve." Louise begs Kiara to stop him, but Patty insists it won't kill her. Just then, Louise pulls a cutter from her pocket and slashes Patty's face. Then, she attacks Kiara. Amidst the chaos, Ant rushes forward, grabbing the keys from Patty's belt. Kiara pleads, "I'm a victim too. Don't leave me. I was Agnes's age when this happened to me." Ignoring her, they all escape, locking the door behind them. Just as they are about to leave, Mike appears in front of them and opens fire. Forced to retreat, they run back inside the house, locking every possible entry. Meanwhile, outside, Mike unlocks Patty and Kiara, informing them that they're inside the house. Inside, Louise tries calling for help from the landline, but Kiara cuts the connection from outside. Louise and Ben block the gate with furniture. Louise quickly formulates a plan, but Ben hesitates. They have guns. Louise insists, "If they get inside, they're going to kill us." Ben, panicked, stammers, "I don't know what to do." Louise yells, "Stop! Your family needs you." Suddenly, the house goes dark. They turn on their phone flashlights. Outside, Patty plays loud music from his car, taunting them. Ben grabs a bottle of alcohol and tells Louise, "If we can set the thatched roof above above the barn on fire. Someone might see it. They rush to execute the plan. Ben sets the bottle ablaze, but just as he opens the window, Mike fires a shot. Startled, Ben drops the bottle inside the house. Louise fires, while Ben hurls the burning bottle. It rolls down and lands on a car. Mike shoots again, and they quickly run back inside, barricading the door. Ben tells the kids to hide inside the Elmira. Louise instructs them, "Don't move, and don't make a sound until you hear my voice." They carefully close the Elmira. Louise then grabs a bottle of acid, while Ben picks up a hammer. Suddenly, he hears a noise. Peeking through a gap in the window, he spots Patty outside. Patty calls out, "Ben, is that you in there?" Just then, the car outside explodes. Patty laughs, "You blew up my car." At that moment, Louise arrives. Patty yells, "Coming in, Ben." Meanwhile, Mike sets up a ladder and climbs onto the roof. Ben and Louise share a quick embrace before Ben rushes upstairs. Patty manages to break into the house, yelling, "Aunt!" Hearing his voice, everyone freezes in fear. Louise, alert, grabs a tool. Mike smashes a window and enters the house. Panicked, Ben hides inside an Elmira while Mike moves forward with his gun. At the same time, Kiara sneaks in through the basement. Louise spots Patty as he hears her voice. He rushes to open the door, but it's blocked with furniture. He pushes against it while Louise desperately tries to keep him out. Just then, she stabs his hand with the tool. Patty lets out a pained scream and blindly fires his gun inside. Just then, Louise hears footsteps approaching from the other side. She quickly locks the door and runs out of there. Patty finally forces his way inside, and Kiara joins him. Meanwhile, Ben watches from inside the Elmira as Mike stands just outside, searching. Kiara calls out sweetly, "Aunt, if you make some noise and show us where you are, we'll go easy on you." Patty yells, "If you don't, I'm putting you through the wood chipper." They both move upstairs when suddenly, Aunt starts coughing. Patty, now alert, turns back and heads toward the Elmira. He swings open the door, only to find a phone playing a breathing app. Just then, Louise appears and hurls acid onto Patty's face. He screams in agony as she grabs the kids and runs. She rushes them upstairs while Patty writhes in pain. Mike spots them and fires a shot, but it's only a reflection in the mirror. Ben swings his hammer, but misses. An intense fight breaks out. Mike gains the upper hand and is about to slam Ben's face into sharp, broken glass when Louise appears. She swings the hammer down onto Mike's head, killing him instantly. She tells Ben to take Mike's car keys. Meanwhile, Kiara is frantically pouring water on Patty's burnt face. He gasps, "You have to do this. Go get them." Kiara picks up a gun and heads outside. The family scrambles upstairs, trying to escape through the window. Just then, Kiara arrives and raises her gun. Before she can shoot, Louise lunges at her. Kiara is thrown off balance and falls from the ledge, taking the ladder down with her. Agnes dangles from the edge. Ben immediately grabs her and pulls her back up. Realizing they have no other way down, Ben makes a bold decision. He jumps. He lands hard, breaking his leg. Gritting through the pain, he forces himself up and resets the ladder. One by one, his family climbs down. Ben instructs, "Agnes, go to the car." Just then, they hear rustling. Something is approaching. They brace themselves. It's just an animal. Just then, Patty suddenly appears behind them, Agnes at gunpoint. He commands Ben to drop the gun. Ben obeys without hesitation. Louise pleads, "Do whatever you want with us. Just let her go." Patty says, "I can't kill her. She's all I've got now. She'll take care of me." Just then, Agnes suddenly drives a syringe straight into Patty's stomach. He gasps, his body beginning to weaken. Ben calls for Aunt to come with them, but Aunt picks up a heavy stone. With a fierce scream, he smashes Patty's head again and again until there's nothing left. He yells loudly to release his frustration and anger. As they drive off, Agnes hands and his beloved Hoppy. A single tear rolls down Aunt's cheek, and the movie ends. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.